good evening, this is Hound Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and I've been meaning for some time to add a few observations about the situation in Iran and the shooting down of a commercial airliner with 176 passengers all dying, an absolute tragedy. And there has been some inference that it was the American assassination of Soleimani, a general in the Iranian army, that caused all of this situation, and had that not happened, then those people may be alive today. Our own Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, said a similar kind of line when it first happened, and thankfully he's recanted and laid the blame at the feet of the Iranian government, which is exactly where it belongs. Because to have a commercial airliner taking off from your airport when the military are on high alert, there are tensions in the area, there is the possibility of missiles coming in and so on and so forth, and nobody told these military installations that there was commercial airliners taking off. Nobody grounded the plane or the planes from taking off during this situation. To allow commercial aircraft to fly during a period of high tension like that is absolutely insane. So not only did the Iranians fire the missiles at the airliner, but they basically allowed the airliner to put itself in harm's way without either grounding the airline or informing the military that this was going to be taking place. But there has been much unrest in that area for decades. I'm sure we could go back even further than that, but let's just have a brief recap, and we'll go back to 1953, and the Prime Minister is Mohammad Mossadegh, and he is a nationalist Prime Minister, and he is trying to keep all of the oil and gas, the natural resources in Iran for Iranians. And of course the oil companies didn't like that, so the CIA assisted a coup, and the Iranian military took out Mossadegh and reinstated the Shah of Iran. The Shah stayed there until 1979, was a great ally of the US in all of those years during the Cold War, and of course immediately after installation he handed over 40% of the oil rights in Iran to the American oil companies. And as I say, he stayed in power until 1979, until he was deposed by the Islamic Revolution. And the current Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, is living in Bethesda, Maryland. And he and the Americans, of course, are fanning the flames of revolution and supporting the protesters every way that they can to try and get rid of the Islamic government. And of course the protesters are out on the streets. It had died down, but there was literally tens of thousands last year out on the streets protesting for freedom and more democracy, and this shooting down of the plane has really fired people up again, because initially Iran lied about the incident, said they had nothing to do with it, tried to implicate the US in the whole situation, and so now there are shouts for him to resign and calling him a liar and so on and so forth. And so this is very, very unsettling in Iran, and I'm still not absolutely convinced that the Iranian government didn't provoke this situation themselves, the initial situation that is, that prompted America to assassinate Soleimani, one of the generals in the Iranian government, to put them on a war footing with the US, because it's been said that if Iran were to be in that situation, that the protesters on the street would suddenly be defending Iranian sovereignty, and they would forget all about protesting. So we have to bear this kind of stuff in mind, that governments get very nervous when they start seeing these kind of revolutionary things happening on the streets of their own country. Another situation which is always getting ready to burst into flames is the Israeli-Iranian situation, and the Iranian government has threatened to wipe Israel off the face of the planet, and Israel has threatened to nuke Iran in return, and so this war of words still keeps on going backwards and forwards, and this is a very, very ongoing tenuous situation which could flare up at any moment. Now, of course, the other big flashpoint in that area is the Straits of Hormuz, and this is basically the main flow of oil in and out of the Persian Gulf, and it's a sort of narrows, and it could very, very easily be blocked. Oil shipments could be blocked, and if that were to happen, that, my friends, would be a black swan event. Oil prices would probably triple. It would be a real crisis, an absolute crisis. Now, one of the other big things that's happening in that area, I mean, of course, there's things happening all over in that area. You know, you've got the ongoing Syrian situation, you have the Kurdish situation. You know, there are Kurds in Syria, in Turkey, in Iran and Iraq, basically at the nexus point of where an awful lot of gas pipeline activity is taking place. And so we have several gas pipelines being constructed, which are by bilateral or trilateral agreements with several of the countries in that area. So the first one is the Iran-Iraq-Syrian pipeline, running from Iran through Syria and to eventually get up to Europe. Qatar is building a pipeline which is going to pass through Iraq and Jordan and Syria, again going to Europe. There is a Russian-Turkish pipeline which is being built to bypass the Ukrainian pipeline that goes to Europe, because there's all kinds of payment issues between Ukraine and Russia for natural gas. And there is a Turkish-Israel pipeline which is set to go through Europe into Greece and Turkey, and a private Israel pipeline that's going into Italy via Cyprus. And all of these pipelines are competing for energy sales in Europe. And of course, when you have no love lost between all of these entities, I mean, I don't even know how they can possibly provide security for these pipelines, especially as several of these pipelines go very, very close to Kurdish enclaves, and this is a very, very unsettled region. And even the Kurds themselves, even though they are being persecuted all around by Iran, Iraq, Syria and Turkey, they are within themselves fighting their own wars for land which they don't possess. They have a kind of semi-autonomous region, as I say, at a nexus point between all of these countries, but it is a very unstable area. ISIS is extremely active in that area, and of course these pipelines are going to be like magnets to any terrorist activities that might want to take place, any threats, any leverage, anything like this, because pipelines, as we know, are very vulnerable, and of course gas being flammable, it would cause quite the explosion should there be some kind of attack on one of these pipelines. So and of course what we haven't even spoken about yet is all of that enriched uranium that Iran was making. Remember that stuff? That enriched uranium was going to Russia and the Ukraine. Wouldn't be a connection there by any chance, would there? I mean, there's so much stuff going on in this area. It's absolutely unbelievable, and whether it is ever going to be resolved, I don't know. It just seems so untenable right now. But the tension in this area, it certainly wasn't caused by American actions, although it may have been exacerbated by American actions. But of course, I mean, how far are we going to go back? Say 1953 is a long time ago. But as you can see, there's absolutely no doubt we've been messing in that area of the world for far too long. And it really is only the energy in that area that makes it such a vital strategic point. But really, now that America has energy independence, maybe it really is time to pull out of there and let the Middle East sort out its own problems, because this is very much a situation of walking into a married couple who are fighting with each other, and you try and intervene to help both of them, and they both join together and attack you. So you can't win. There's no way that we're going to resolve those issues, because those issues are unique to that area, and we really have very little understanding. Maybe the government has intelligence on these areas, but certainly at our level, the general public's level, most people really do not understand the depth and the longevity of the issues and tensions. I mean, we could go back to biblical times when the Assyrians were fighting with the Persians and so on and so forth. I mean, this has been an ongoing battle for centuries. So I don't think we're ever going to resolve it, and I think the sooner that we can get away from there and just do plain business. If they're selling oil and we want to buy it, if they're selling natural gas and we want to buy it, well, let that be, and let them get on with their own business, and let our side of the world get on with its business. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on that, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.